Rain hits the windshield like a thrown handful of nails. The Nairobi night eats sound, a long street light hum, the wet hiss of tires, and the taxi's old radio whispering a tired song in Swahili. Daniel Mwangi keeps one hand on the wheel and the other on the prayer beads that loop over the gear stick, beads worn smooth by 1,000 starts and 1,000 goodbyes. The beads are his mother's. Their scent is faint dust and orange soap. A flash of yellow from a sign, a smell of petrol, the sudden stench of fear from nowhere. And then a figure collapses at the median under the Nairobi skyline. Daniel slams the brakes just shy of a puddle that splashes neon like a broken mirror. A silver fountain pen skitters across his dashboard, the cap stamped with the initials K.A. The pen strikes the prayer beads and spins them like a small planet. For a long second the whole city holds its breath. He has one clean choice: drive on and sleep through the guilt, or open the door and bring a stranger into his car. The taxi door creaks. He reaches out. The night answers. He pulls the stranger into the back seat with a worried care that is part muscle memory and part new fear. The man is tall, black suit soaked dark with rain, a sleek phone smashed under his heel, a tennis-sized bruise blooming above his left eye. "Water?" the man croaks, voices raw like grinding metal. Daniel fumbles a bottle from the glove box and lets the man sip. The silver pen lies between them like a small, sharp truth. The stranger presses his palm to the pen as if protecting it and mutters, "Asante." Daniel thinks the word is thanks. Later he learns it is also a name. Sirens grow distant and then die. The city looks smaller from the inside of the taxi. Daniel decides to take the man to the nearest clinic instead of a police station. The choice tastes like iron and diesel. He drives into a back lane, past a shoe. Tuttered street market where a lone vendor lights a paraffin stove and watches him go with a hooded stare. A young cop in a raincoat flags him, and Daniel tricks his way past with a story about a broken leg and a drunk, and the cop lets him go. Obstruction number 1 is a breath taken. They slip down alleys that smell of cooking cassava and hot metal. The clinic is a neon cross behind a boarded shop, a place with humming lights and a tired nurse who knows too many midnight secrets. She patches the stranger's head and breathes out a string of Kiswahili scoldings that turn to small medicines. The stranger stares at the pen the whole time like it is a sleeping animal. Daniel watches too, and the pen becomes more than silver. It is a piece of weather, a thing that can bring rain or stop it. While the nurse stitches, Daniel thinks about his day job, routes, fares, whispered stories from passengers, the steady roll of the meter. Stranger falls into a taxi at midnight once, and suddenly everything blurs. The first obstacle shows its teeth when a Mercedes idles outside, and a man in a sharp suit shines a lamp into the clinic. They leave through the back gate into a sky that tastes like rust. A shadow moves with them. Daniel presses the gas. Diesel sings. A truck honks. He weaves through sleeping traffic and wonders if helping was a seed or a trap. A shout from the rear view snaps Daniel's attention. Two men in dark jackets step into the road with the confidence of men who know they can break a small life without leaving a mark. Their hands come up like a pair of questions that expect the same answer. Daniel's arms tighten. The stranger grips the pen and says, "Hide it." Daniel clamps the pen to the floor under his seat and drives into a narrow lane where a boda rider waits with a face like an open book. They lose the men by slipping under a shutter that barely clears the roof. The city is a maze, and Daniel knows many thin corridors where the street lamps go soft. But the danger is not only on foot. A black SUV rumbles past with dark windows and a logo that is too familiar. A ring, an orbital line, and the letters AGT. Daniel keeps going and then finds himself at a bridge that looks out over the river. The air is cool and the water is thick with the city's secrets. The stranger stares down at the pen, then at Daniel, and says a single word, "Asante Group." Daniel thinks of adverts on buses, of glossy offices in Westlands, of men who wear watches like crowns. He realizes the stranger is not just hurt. He is hunted. The morning spreads sideways across the city, but night is not wholly gone. The second obstacle comes in the form of a phone buzzing. The stranger's phone, now a spiderweb of cracked glass, lights up with a call labeled bored. The stranger ignores it and says, "They know I have something that can show them." He touches his head with the hand that is not holding the pen and wishes the pain away with a breath. He tells Daniel in halting English that he is Kwame Asante and that he runs a company that makes things people do not see: systems, money maps, software that moves millions of shillings in heartbeats. Then his voice goes low. "I am in Kenya because I saw a file. It shows ministers and men trading land and water, handing the city to towers that bleed its people." Daniel has never touched a computer for a reason other than to play songs in the taxi, but he knows a corrupt thing when he sees it. The pen is suddenly a tiny coffin for a key. Inside the cap is a hidden memory stick. It holds names like knives. Fear makes the city loud. News vans are quick in Nairobi when a scandal tastes sweet. The third obstacle cracks open when a report runs online. A blurry clip of a man in a suit being helped from a car, a headline that calls the man a mystery foreigner, and a comment thread that calls the taxi driver a suspect. Overnight, the taxi becomes a rumor. A neighbor calls and says the local police have questions. Daniel answers those questions with a patient voice while keeping the headlights on life. He knows that being a taxi driver is living with doors open to the whole world, to joys, to griefs, to trouble. But being a man who helped a rich stranger is a different class of open. Daniel grows small under stares, and people who once gave him a nod give him a cold shoulder. His sister Amina, who sorts the charts and counts their thin money, scolds him over a phone and begs him to go home and stop stirring big water. Daniel coughs and says he is careful. He is not sure how much careful can mean when men with logos watch from the road. The midpoint flips like a light switch. Daniel thinks he has saved a man, maybe opened a door to gratitude and money and a safe reward. Instead, Kwame leans into the night and tells him the real reason he is in Nairobi. He is not here to spend a week of speaking or to hunt for boardroom deals. He is here because a whistleblower in a ministry sent a file that maps how land for a new water plant was sold to shell companies tied to a minister named Gideon Osi. Gideon is older than the law, Kwame says, and the phone rings like a small bell and then stops. Daniel realizes then that the silver pen is not just a mark of class, it is a small, clean weapon able to unlock the evidence. The twist is a cold one. Daniel did not rescue a helpless stranger. He rescued a man with power and a target pinned to his back, and by doing so he pins himself to the same target. The taxi's engine rattles like a throat clearing. Kwame insists he can make things right, that justice is a machine he knows how to start. But he also says there will be sacrifices. Daniel imagines sacrifices like different coins that he cannot afford. The obstacles grow taller. First comes the smear on social media, a collage of frames showing Daniel taking cash from a man on a stretcher, a caption calling him a briber. Then the police knock on his door in the early light and take his car to an impound yard on a flimsy charge. The taximeter clicks a silence he has never heard. Amina sits on the steps and cries a small, sharp sound that rides into Daniel's bones. He calls Kwame, and Kwame says softly, "There will be pushback. People will try to buy you." Friends avoid the taxi stand. The market ladies refuse his rides. Daniel sleeps in fits, with the prayer beads tangled in the towel that used to dry his mother's face. He thinks of selling the beads, of trading history for fuel, but the beads feel heavier than any price. A curious witness arrives on the scene, a young motorbike rider named Fatima, who says she filmed a car following the Mercedes the night of the attack. She shows Daniel the video on a cracked phone. It is shaky, but true. A black SUV, the logo that matches the company, stopping by the clinic, a silhouette stepping toward the stranger. For the first time, he has something besides the pen. He has a moving piece of a puzzle. Fatima becomes a friend with sharp edges, ready to fight with a broken camera and steady hands. Then the crisis hits, like a truck at midnight. A trembling call comes through to Daniel at a time when Nairobi's lamps are small moons. Amina is taken. She is on a mat on the side of a road, one of the market women says, crying. Men with voices like gravel tell Daniel that his sister sits in a van in the compound of a man he has never seen, and a message follows, hand over the pen and the files, or she dies. Daniel's world divides into before and after with a small, terrible snap. He can feel the prayer beads at his side like a chain. He has kept the pen safe under a false floorboard in his one-room home. Kwame says he will pull some strings, reach someone who knows someone, but the men are close, and they do not like complicated things. Daniel sits with the pen and the beads in his hands and thinks of the evening he held Amina's forehead as their mother taught them to fold a wound into patience. The choice is a knife, and he can see both edges. Give up the evidence and get his sister back, or keep the truth and risk everything. He calls Kwame and hears nothing but a tired breath that could be courage or calculation. The hard choice is raw and immediate. He goes to the place their lives first collide, the highway median where he found the stranger. He places the pen on the same wet bit of asphalt like a child leaving a toy at a crossroads. He decides not to give it away. He decides to trust that the truth will be louder than his fear. The cost is immediate. Amina dies under a sky that refuses to answer. The news comes like a stone through glass. Daniel holds her small service with two neighbors and Fatima, who cries with him, and then quietly films the crowd for memory. The loss takes a part of him that will not come back. The choice had a reason and a wreckage. He is hollow, and not hollow at once. Rage becomes a motor in his chest. Kwame kneels at his doorway, hands raw from a night of calls, eyes bloodshot but steady. I owe you, he says, and the debt is not money. It is a promise to use everything he has to make Gideon Osei fall. Daniel feels like a small match in the rain. He wonders if his sister's death can be a light for others or a smoke that chokes him. He chooses the light. He hands Fatima the pen and the shaky videos. She uploads them to a cheap cloud and sends the links to everyone. Kwame calls a press room and books a spot on a popular morning show. Daniel agrees to speak. He is raw, his voice a cracked bell. Spectacle waits. Multi-climax begins like a sunrise. A stadium fills with reporters, citizens, and a thin ribbon of demonstrators who hold up chalk signs with names on them. There are cameras, flags, and the electric smell of many charged phones. The program is live. Gideon Osei walks into the auditorium with the heavy comfort of men who have never learned fear. He wears a suit like armor and a smile that tries to be simple. The crowd hushes as Kwame takes the stage with Daniel by his side, a taxi driver with prayer beads and a small coffin of guilt in his pocket. Kwame holds up the silver pen and tells the story with the clean lines of someone who knows the machinery of power. Fatima, who has learned to speak simply and steady, walks up with a phone showing the shaky footage of Gideon's men by the clinic. A bus conductor, a woman named Mary, steps forward and plays a clip of a voice memo someone handed to her that names a list of shell companies. The room breaks into a whisper like a wind through dry grass. Gideon's face goes a color that the press would later call waning confidence. Then the unexpected witness appears, a clerk from Gideon's own office, a small man named Joseph, who used to file papers and now carries the smell of too many secrets. He wipes his palms, mounts a stool, and reads a ledger from the past year with a calm, flat voice. The ledger is a map drawn in numbers, and the crowd is a sea suddenly full of boats. People in the front row cry out. The television cuts to a close-up of Gideon's face. He tries to laugh it off, to call for a legal team, but the live feed is sharp and the evidence is hung like a net. Gideon tries to leave, but a group of people stands in his path. Someone in the crowd shouts that the law is a thing that must answer the people, and a police officer in the wings remembers his duty. Gideon's security scuffles, but their gestures are old and the evidence is new. The minister's cell phone rings and a senior cop answers it in a voice that chooses sides. Footage swirls on phones across the stadium and then across the country. The hashtag #AsanteTruth climbs and climbs. Gideon is stripped of power in the way men are when light catches them. His resignation is read in a voice that sounds like a closure. Arrest follows. He is not the movie villain with a dramatic exit. He is a man who steps down and is escorted by hands that once trembled at his name. After the spectacle, there is a rain that feels clean. The city rearranges itself around the new facts. Daniel sits on a cheap stool behind a counter in a community center and holds his prayer beads. The beads have a new thread knotted through them by Kwame's secretary, who is a woman who knows how to stitch hope into small things. The pen, the original silver, is placed in a public archive with a note. The company Kwame runs sets up a fund in Amina's name to help drivers and market women who lose their income to corruption and slander. The taxi that was impounded is returned with a fresh coat of paint and a sticker that says, "For Amina." People who once whispered pass him with nods that carry apology. Daniel takes a route down to the river where the city meets the slow, steady water and opens his old meter like one might open a small shrine. He finds a new job teaching other drivers how to record evidence on phones, how to find safe routes, how to hold their stories up like shields. Fatima keeps filming, her camera now a habit for truth. The unexpected witnesses keep telling their simple tales in courts and on forums that smell sharp of ink and law. Gideon is not gone quietly. He faces a trial that is thin on theatrics and thick on papers. The city's rules are not fully rewritten overnight, but a committee forms and laws get teeth. Daniel feels the weight of what was lost, and also what was given back. He never unlearns the image of Amina's small hands clutched to his shirt the last time he saw her, but he learns to make that image into a reason to keep pushing. 6 months later, the sky over Nairobi lightens with a steady blue that is easy to miss unless you are looking. Daniel stands by a bench in a small park near the city center. The bench is newly painted and has a brass plaque with Amina's name on it. He places the silver pen on the bench beside the prayer, beads that hang now from a new hook his neighbor installed. A small crowd forms. Taxi drivers, market women, Kwame with his quiet smile, and Fatima, who records everything with a steady hand. They place a small tree in the soil near the bench. Its roots are promised to the ground like a new vow. The pen is a symbol now of truth that hurts, of how small things can change the shape of power. Daniel runs his thumb along the beads and breathes in the city. He has a new job, too, a community liaison funded by the Asante Group to help drivers stay safe. The taxi still runs, but it carries more than fares. It carries stories, and sometimes it brings people to legal aid, to clinics, to the stadium when truth needs a stage. The city hums. People call his name and smile. Some still do not. He forgives people slowly. Forgiveness is not a race. He plants himself in small acts. A ride for a woman in labor, a lift for a boy who missed a bus, a story told calmly at a table where laws are now being made. Change moves like water, slow, then suddenly present. The city remembers the night with the silver pen and the prayer beads. Children ask about it, and Daniel answers them in short sentences that carry long thoughts. "We can help," he tells a boy who wants to know what courage is. He points at the bench where Amina's name sits between two small bolts, and at the little tree that rustles like a new voice. Kwame visits sometimes and helps with a program that gives legal workshops to market women. Fatima keeps her camera at the ready and once catches a scene of a group of drivers saving a stalled bus with a push. The footage goes viral for a day, and people laugh with relief. Gideon's trial crawls through courts and papers, and Daniel sits as a witness, steady as a man who has held both loss and proof in his hands. There is no movie finish here. The city keeps working. Water bills still climb. Sometimes the road is rough. But the bench and the tree are a simple ledger of change. The pen sits in an archive that parents can ask about, a small object with a rim of 1,000,000 small decisions. Night comes now. Daniel drives with the prayer beads clutched in one hand and a new certainty in the other. He sees people like a map of work and weather. He stops for the tired, the hungry, the lost. He remembers the choice at the median and the cold keenness of the pen under his shoe. He knows that a single small act, a hand reached out, a door opened, can begin things that become large. He thinks of Amina every time he tucks the beads between his fingers. The city carries on, not healed entirely but changed, a place where a taxi driver can be the start of a storm that clears air. The silver pen gathers dust in an archive, and the prayer beads gather oil from his hands. Both are small, daily things holding a hard, bright truth. Moral: small acts of kindness can shift power when matched with courage and truth. Would you have stopped to help a stranger at midnight? Yes or no? If this story warmed you, leave a kind comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe here for more true field tales of courage and change. 2 weeks later, Nairobi wakes to a dawn that tastes like rain and metal and promise. And Daniel finds himself stepping from a Danfo damp night into a room where cameras blink like patient rain clouds, and a soft hum of generators keeps the city's breath even as the crowd gathers around a makeshift stage in a park where Amina's bench stands polished and small against the blue smoke of dawn, while Fatima's steady camera rests on a tripod, and Kwame's quiet smile slides between faces like a hinge. The air carries a gift and a warning, a whisper that says the story is moving faster than feet can run, and the immediate stakes could redraw the map of power in this city. So he asks himself what it means to tell the truth when truth has become currency. The interval beat arrives in the form of a reveal that arrives as softly as a rainfall that refuses to end. A billionaire, the hidden breath behind the Asante Group, walks onto the stage not with a roar, but with a calm, deliberate stride, a glassy SUV left idling at the edge of the crowd, and a name spoken by the crowd's murmurs, the founder and philanthropist who has funded the whistle, funded the clinics, funded the volunteers, and now, on live TV, steps out to claim the ledger as more than memory and the pen as more than a weapon. She is Ade Njeri, CEO of Odongo Holdings, a woman whose wealth sits in a private wing of this city, yet who speaks in the plain language of market stalls and street prayers. And she announces that the file Kwame carried was not a lone act, but a necessary turning of the wheel, that shell companies were never a private game, but a system in which the poor paid the tolls, and that she will fund a complete public audit, a new water project, and a sustained safety program for drivers, with Daniel named as a trusted liaison. The crowd gasps, the city tilts, and for a moment the wealth gap is not a tip of the we had to power, but a bridge between two kinds of citizens, those who wait for justice to come from above and those who lift their hands to pull it down. And Daniel's own hands tremble as the memory stick is passed from Kwame to Ade, the pen resting in Ade's palm like a captured star, a symbol of both what can be weapons and what can be witnesses. The interval beat tightens as the first question lands. If a billionaire can fund justice, what price does that set on ordinary courage? And will the man who stood at the median in the rain be enough to carry the weight of a reform that touches bus routes, market stalls, and the quiet hours of every toll collector who never sees the light of day as a reward? The answer comes not in celebration, but in a plan. Ade explains that the fund will operate with transparency blocks, community auditors, and a living memorial to Amina that will keep the city honest when politicians forget their own names. And Daniel is asked to lead a pilot program that trains drivers to document harassment, route violence, and theft with clear, shareable footage. In the back of the crowd, a Danfo horn blares, and a market grandmother nods, recognizing that kindness now has a bank account, while Fatima's camera captures Adai's gaze, locking onto Gideon's lost confidence, turning the room into a courtroom of possibilities even before any court has spoken. The mid-paragraph turning point arrives when the wet road outside reflects a dual portrait: the bright glass towers beyond the river and the corrugated zinc roofs of the market, and in that reflection Daniel sees that the power he dodged by helping a stranger has new guardians now, not just new enemies. Ade's words land like rain on metal, promising safeguards, not gifts. And the memory stick's contents are explained in plain terms: a ledger of theft, a map of land deals, a chain of beneficiaries that ends at Gideon's door and begins at a desk where a clerk once filed papers in fear. The audience learns that the wealth behind the fevered headlines can be used to change the weather in a city that learned to live with drought and is now learning to flourish in rain. And Kwame's careful, bruised face softens with relief as he realizes his role was not to bear the entire weight alone, but to hand the baton to a force strong enough to keep running after the camera turns off. The close loops begin as the press room clears and a formal agreement is signed on a banner that reads, Asante Odongo, not as a surrender, but as a redesign. Gideon is summoned to a public audit. His secretary's name appears on a list of witnesses who will testify, and the crowd disperses in waves of shoes on pavement, while Daniel steps forward with the pen and beads tucked away, not as a prize but as a reminder that truth needs hands to lift it and feet to walk with it. And Amina's name is etched on the bench's brass plaque as a living pledge that the people will not forget how small acts can rise to meet immense power when kindness is matched with courage and a plan. Fatima's camera, still and careful, swivels toward the city's edge where a security van arrives and out steps a driver who looks familiar, not by face, but by the quiet vow in his eyes. The vow that the road will not forget Amina's name, that the children will learn to document fear before it becomes fate, that the old meter Daniel kept for luck will now be a teaching tool for the next generation of drivers, and the park's new sapling sways as if it heard the city's breath, as if its roots know the path of this night from rain to reform. 6 months into this fresh era, the skyline wears a different silhouette. The glass towers stand taller, but the market stalls glow with purpose. And the Asante/Odongo Alliance funds clinics, scholarships, and safe route maps for drivers who once carried fear to the curb. Daniel, now a community liaison with a formal title, moves with a measured stride that carries both loss and hope, balancing the old ritual of prayer beads with the new ritual of reporting and accountability, teaching others to speak into the light of a camera and to accept the responsibility that comes with a story told well. The memory stick remains in Ade's archive, not a weapon but a beacon, and the pen, once a coffin for truth, has become a symbol of a shared ledger where every name, driver, patient, market woman, student, has a line to read aloud on the day the city decides to be fair. The wealth gap is no longer a chasm to fear but a dial that can be turned with governance, dialogue, and grace, and the narrative finally lands on a gentle, hopeful rhythm. The city will keep turning, the people will keep watching, and the ones who gave the most to the common good. One unlikely taxi driver, one cautious journalist, one anonymous donor, will be remembered as the quiet wind that shaped the night into morning. Then a soft hush cuts through the crowd, and Adai smiles, turning to Daniel with a nod that says the work is ongoing, the risk still there. And the next chapter will require the same courage dressed in ordinary clothes, the same honesty dressed in small acts, and the same willingness to trust a stranger at midnight whose act of kindness can become a nation's turning point. Because yes, in this city where rain writes the map, I would stop again for a stranger. And I know you might too, if the price of justice is a bench, a tree, and a pen that finally belongs to all of us. And the final image lingers as the last raindrops fall. The pen glints on the arm of a girl who has learned to tell the truth with calm hands. The beads catch the light as Daniel tucks them away for safekeeping, and the city's pulse steadies, ready for the next weather of courage to break, ready for the next act to begin. Would you have stopped to help a stranger at midnight? Yes or no? If this story warmed you, leave a kind comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe here for more true feel tales of courage and change.